Hey guys, I'm Tori, and today I want to talk to you about the JonBenét Ramsey murder. But I feel like I could sit down in front of my camera and honestly talk about this with no notes for like 4.5 hours. I have a hyperfixation with this case, truthfully. Whenever I went to college, I majored in forensic psychology for 3 years mainly of this case, because I just so badly wanted it to be solved. So anyways, I have roughly 12 pages of notes in front of me because I did want to be able to like fact check dates and things and make sure that I wasn't like misquoting anybody. And I do want to say, like, from the beginning of this, I have had different theories that I've felt were more likely what had happened throughout the years. However, at this point, I just want to get all the facts out there in one comprehensive video. I think about this all the time, so we're just gonna get into it. So JonBenét was born August 6th, 1990 in Boulder, Colorado, and her name, JonBenét, is actually a French twist on her dad's name, JonBenét. Her parents were John Ramsey and Patsy Ramsey. Her brother was Burke Ramsey, and her family was very wealthy. Her father worked for Access Graphics Designs. He was actually the CEO there. She lived in a 15-bedroom mansion in Boulder, and she was a pageant queen, and she had at least 5 high-profile titles by the time that she passed away. The pageants she attended were often hotspots for PDF files, and to this day, her father claims that he always had an uneasy feeling about JonBenét taking part in these pageants. However, it does seem like Patsy was the one that was really involved with the pageants. She really wanted her to be taking part in these, though they claim that JonBenét wanted to do them. Okay, getting into her parents now. So Patsy Ramsey was born December 29th, 1956, and she married John Ramsey November 5th, 1980 at age 23. She had her first child, Burke Ramsey, January 21st, 1987, and her second child, JonBenét Ramsey, on August 8th, 1990. She competed in pageants when she was younger, and she also held titles from them. I believe it was... Hey guys, this is Tori again, editing. She did win Miss West Virginia in 1977.
But I feel like that could be wrong.
I was close enough. Let's go into John now. John Ramsey was born December 7th, 1943. He was married before he was married to Patsy to Lucinda Pash from 1966 to 1978, and he had a daughter named Elizabeth. Elizabeth unfortunately died in a car crash on January 8th, 1992 in Burr Ridge, Illinois. That was only a few years before, unfortunately, what happens with JonBenét as well. He was high up in his company, Access Graphics. Like I said, he was the CEO of this company. He moved his family from Atlanta to Boulder I think just a few years before this happened. And they were originally, JonBenét was born in Atlanta. It's so hard for my brain to get through the basic details of this case because I'm reading the notes that I have for myself, and I'm like, oh, but this, and this, to every little thing that I want to say, I want to go back and contradict it because I'm like, oh, but this is disputed by the media, or but this is disputed by what they said later, or whatever. I'm just go through the notes. Okay. So Burke Ramsey was born January 27th in 1982. He was 9 years old when his sister passed away, and according to sources close to the family, he had a history of violence/anger issues and would sometimes get jealous of his sister because of all the attention she got from competing and her parents, but that is just a claim. That is just alleged. I don't know Burke. Days leading up to it, so December 23rd, the Ramseys have a giant Christmas party at their house. Their friends, the Whites, the Fernies, the Steins, the Barnhills, all of these people are over. The kids are making gingerbread houses. They've got friends of friends. This is a big, big Christmas party. Something very odd did happen at the Ramsey residency that night, just, 72 hours, just 3 days before what unfortunately ends up happening to JonBenét. So someone called 911 from the Ramsey residency that night at 6:48 p.m. There's lots of alleged things that could have happened. It could have been an accident. Weird. We don't know why that happened. Because the police were called, so it was a call and hang up. And so the police tried to call back. Dispatchers called back, they didn't answer. And so they actually sent a cop to the Ramsey residency. They sent an officer out there to make sure that everything was okay. Then he didn't file a report after that. So as far as Christmas Day itself, it went pretty normal. The kids got up, they opened presents, and then They went over for Christmas dinner at their friends the White's house. They had done that the year before as well. It wasn't abnormal. And then Patsy had prepared these Christmas gift baskets for some of her friends. So they went after dinner. They stopped at the Walkers to give them a gift basket, and then the Steins, and then they were supposed to make one more stop, but it was late, so they decided to just go home. JonBenét had apparently already fallen asleep in the car. This is one of the parts that it starts to get like just a little bit, from the very beginning, just these conflicting stories. So the family says that JonBenét was asleep when they got home. John carried her in, he put her to bed. Patsy changed her into her long johns, and they put her into bed, and she didn't even wake up for this. And why the family says that there's misreporting from the beginning is that allegedly they say that John read the kids at bedtime story, and he said that never happened, and he never said that happened, that was just completely misreported. And then they were supposed to go to Michigan the day after Christmas. John has family there, his older kids are out there, and he was supposed to go see them. That did not end up happening. So here is the timeline according to the family. Like I said, they got home, John put JonBenét to bed, but either way, whether he had read them a bedtime story or not, whenever JonBenét went to bed that night, that was the last time that they would see their daughter alive. Nothing was noticeably off in the house whenever they got home. There was no signs of a break-in. Burke allegedly also went to bed whenever they got home. So this is again where there's conflicting stories. So this is the story that's officially from the family that John still claims to this day. Burke went to bed at the same time, stayed in bed, wasn't up until they went and woke him up the next day. Here's where it conflicts. Dr. Phil had an interview with Burke in 2016, and during that interview, he asks if he got up and was playing with a toy. He was like, I heard that was something that you did, that you were up playing with a toy. And Burke was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, there was a toy that I wanted to play with. Like, yeah, I did that. But can change the story, but also, like, if he just, like, sneakily got up and was, like, playing with his toy in the dark in secret, his parents may have just not known that. JonBenét might have not known that. It might just be, like, a totally different, like, irrelevant piece of information, but it doesn't line up with the family's official story, so it is important to mention that. But the next morning, on December 26, 1996, Patsy wakes up at around 5 a.m. Remember, they are supposed to be catching a flight this morning on their private plane because they are going to Michigan. And she wakes up, she puts back on the same clothes that she had worn the night before, and she heads down the spiral stairs to the back of the house, through the back of the house to head to the kitchen, and finds the ransom note on the stairs. A few things I want to get into here. She's been heavily criticized for putting the same clothes back on that she did the night before, that she'd worn the night before. It's like a red sweater. It's Christmas though. And honestly, I feel like if I was about to fly, I'd want it from Denver to Michigan. I'd want to just, I don't know. I can kind of see it. Like, I can see, like, re-wearing an outfit throughout the holidays. Not that far-fetched. She also, though, has a full face of makeup. So the idea here is, did she not go to bed? Was she up all night because of what happened with JonBenét? Like, what really happened here? I don't know. But she also has said, well, I had a full face of makeup because my mom, I grew up in the South, and she drilled it into me, like, you cannot leave the house without a full face of makeup. So that does kind of make sense. But it could also be that she still had her full face from the night before. So she goes down the stairs and she finds this ransom note. And this is, again, where things differ. She says in some accounts of the story that she went into JonBenét's bedroom and she didn't see her in there. And then she screamed for John. And then she found the ransom note on the stairs. In this version of events, which is from their interview, she said, I woke up, I go down the stairs, I'm about to go make coffee, it's really early in the morning, I'm going down the stairs, I see the ransom note, I think it's something that the housekeeper left, she picks it up, she starts to read it, she reads like the first sentence, and then she yells for John. I don't know what really happened because I was not there. I goes to check that the kids are in bed, and Burke is sleeping peacefully in bed. This part I'm a little confused about. I feel like if I heard my mom scream, I would not be peaceful. I don't know. Also, I feel like if one of my children is missing, I'm going to wake up my other kid and I'm going to, like, keep them with me. I don't know. I'm not a mom, so I can't say that I would I feel like that's what I would do. But I'm not her. And, this isn't really, I don't know. That's just what I think I would do. So, Burke is sleeping peacefully in his bed, but JonBenét is nowhere to be found. And then at 5:52, the dispatcher, Kimberly Achaleta, I hope I said that correctly, receives a phone call from a frantic Patsy saying that her daughter is missing. 5:59 a.m., 7 minutes after the 911 call was received, Officer Rick French arrives at the scene. John and Patsy then invite their close friends and family over for emotional support. About 6 hours after the police call, Officer Linda noticed John was extremely antsy and sent him and his friend Fleet White to do a final sweep of the house. In the basement, John and Fleet find JonBenét's body in the wine cellar covered in a blanket, and it's obvious she's not alive anymore. John says at first he felt a sense of release knowing that she was in the house and not with kidnappers until the realization set in that she wasn't alive. He laid on the ground and held her in his arms, kissing her forehead and crying. This is when all hope was officially lost for him, because if he's innocent, he believed up until this point that she was alive somewhere and that they might have had a chance of getting her back. John then brings his daughter's body upstairs to where everyone was and set her down by the Christmas tree. Patsy then collapses over her daughter, holding her and screaming inconsolably. Also during this, whenever he found her body, she had duct tape over her mouth and he took it off. I understand the hate for that. I understand the criticism for taking the tape off, for picking her body up. There's a lot of things that have been going wrong the entirety of the case from the beginning with the police work. The whole crime scene is contaminated. I would argue that if he carried her up and put her in bed, that his DNA is already all over her. That's her father. I also, yes, it's something that someone guilty would do. It is. It is something that somebody who is guilty would do. I also, if I saw my child laying like that, don't know that I would be able to ration in my brain, don't touch her. This is a crime scene. That's my baby. Like, I don't know if I would be able to think, oh, I can't get my DNA on this. This is my baby, and I need to, why is there duct tape on her mouth? I could see it happening whether it were a guilty person or genuinely an upset parent. Is it a little odd? The whole thing is a little odd. Now we're going to get into the ransom note. Dun, dun, dun. The ransom note itself, it's a lot. The ransom note itself was written on Patsy's own personal notepad. Her and John both had notepads for whenever they got a phone call, needed to leave a message, written with her pen and her notepad. And they were both put back in different spots, not where they went, and not together. Little odd. Not only was it written in the house because it was written on her notepad, but there was a couple drafts that were written that were thrown in the trash, and they were initially addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, but once the final was done, it says it only addresses John. I also want to say that the entirety of this letter is about 2.5 pages, and it would have taken roughly 20 minutes, at least, at a minimum, to write this letter. It's assuming you know what you're going to say, you're not, like, thinking it out. Okay, so let's get into the letter. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your bank account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining in $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. That's spelled wrong. There's a lot of misspellings in the letter, I believe deliberately. When you get home, you will put money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on the delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money, and hence a earlier delivery, and then delivery is crossed out, pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but we warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory, SBTC. So obviously, that was a lot. Experts do believe that the note was staged. Obviously, if it was written in their house. The handwriting is inconsistent throughout the letter. Some of the A's look different than other A's in it, like it doesn't match up. There's lots of misspelled words, and it looks like quotes were taken out of movies with ransom notes that were written in those movies. The amount of money, $118,000, was the exact amount of John's Christmas bonus, and a relatively small amount of money in comparison to what they had financially. In one of his interviews, he talks about how the $118,000 he had actually received at the beginning of that year as a bonus, and so it was something that $118,000 would be a reoccurring number on all of his pay stubs. So if anybody had gone through any paperwork in the house, that it might have been something that they had seen and a number that they knew he would have. But he also didn't have any impression that anybody, or any reason to believe that anybody had gone through the paperwork in his house. It didn't look like anything had been moved around, but he also doesn't know for sure that it didn't happen. They could have just put it back. Who knows? It's also just odd that they wanted the money the way that they did. I think that's odd that they were like, give it to us in hundreds and 20s. Like, okay. To this day, nobody knows what SBTC stands for. So another odd thing with the letter is it does say specifically in it that he will be receiving a phone call between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. That call never comes. Handwriting experts were able to rule John out very quickly, but Patsy was determined inconclusive. Several handwriting specialists believe that there are certain letters that match the ransom note with Patsy's handwriting perfectly. Experts say it would have taken about 20 minutes for the note to be written, so that is a very long time for the intruder to be in the house, and a large waste of time, assuming JonBenét Ramsey was already deceased. That is a huge waste of time. How they found her body. I hate talking about this. This is like the most... This part of the case, I mean, the whole case is really frustrating, but this is the little girl, you know? It's hard. How her body was found. There was duct tape on her mouth, like I said. That was quickly removed by her dad whenever he found her. There was a garrote around her neck that was made from a paintbrush from her mom's art set. It was made from the handle of her paintbrush, so do with that information what you will. There was a cord around her wrist, and this is a little bit odd. So whenever her dad picked her up and brought her upstairs, it was only on one of her wrists at that point, which if it were being used to restrain her, you would think that it would be like tight and around both of them so that she wouldn't be able to that her hand wouldn't be out that easily. That doesn't really make any sense. However, to play devil's advocate at that same time, nobody knows where the cord came from. Nobody knows where the duct tape came from. All of the other alleged things in this case, right? The ransom note, the paintbrush, all of those things were found in the house and left in the house. Cord is not identifiable to anything else in the house. Nobody can identify where the duct tape came from. Worth noting. She had scratches and bruises all over her body, and she was covered in a blanket. I also want to say when she was found, and this is something that the friend that was with John when he found her, so John and an officer had both gone downstairs previously. She was found in the wine cellar. They had both gone downstairs already, and his friend said that he had specifically looked in the wine cellar where she was found and not seen her. He was able to list off a few things like, oh, I saw this on the wall, blah, blah, whatever. I looked in there and I did not see her. And it was odd to him because John went in there and seemingly found her body on the floor immediately without even turning the lights on. And you could say oh, if he went in and turned on the light because he knew where the light was, it's his house, that would maybe make a little bit of sense, but he didn't turn on the light. So how was he able to see her laying there in the dark under the blanket, but nobody else did? Okay. The autopsy revealed an 8.5-inch dent into her skull due to blunt force trauma to her head. There were 2 bloodstains in her underwear, proof of sexual assault on the night of the murder. The official cause of death was from strangulation. Strangulation happened an estimated 45 minutes to 2 hours after she was hit in the head. Rigor mortis had set in by the time she was found, which means she had been killed 10 to 12 hours prior. This is when the body begins to stiffen up, if you don't know what rigor mortis is. This is a fiber from the sweater Patsy was wearing that night, as well as the next morning, were found on the duct tape that was over JonBenét's mouth. While it's not incriminating that she wanted to wear the same outfit that she'd worn the night before, it is odd that the duct tape that they couldn't place with anybody had the fibers of her mom's sweater on it. I'm just gonna say, I'm not saying anything else. All I'm saying is it's a little weird. That's a little bit weird. She had undigested pineapple in her stomach. Nobody really seems to have an answer as to where that came from, because it doesn't line up with any of the version of events. So either she got home and went right to bed, got carried to bed, was put straight to bed, or she got home, she was read a bedtime story, and then she was put to bed. Neither of those versions of events is she eating pineapple. Okay, weird. And then there's also traces of unidentified male DNA under her fingernails. And then I'm gonna play the 911 call for you guys.
Okay, what's your name? Are you
Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God! Please.
I'm sending an officer over, okay?
Please.
Do you know how long she's been gone?
No, I don't. Please, we just got out and she's not here. Oh my God, please.
Okay, well,
Please, somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath.
Please,
Okay?
hurry.
Patsy.
So that phone call has been played over and over and over and over in countless YouTube videos and documentaries about this case. Operator claims that I don't even want to say claims. The operator thinks that she may have heard a third voice at the end of the phone call after Patsy thought she hung up, but that the technology wasn't advanced enough to be able to figure out what was being said at the time. This is not me saying that I think that Burke did it by any means. I'm just saying that this is what some people believe, that by listening to the end of the phone call enhanced, that this is what they hear. So Kimberly says, Patsy. Kimberly's the dispatcher. John says, we're not speaking to you. Patsy says, what did you do? Help me, Jesus. And Burke says, what did you find? I don't know. That sounds really cynical. I get uncomfortable vibes from Burke. I don't look at him and think that he's cynical, and that might be a hot take. And to be so honest, when I very first learned about this case, I did think that Burke was responsible. I was like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense that he would have gone up and just whacked his sister in the back of the head with a flashlight, and then the parents covered for it. That made sense to me. I don't think that this is necessarily what's being heard in the phone call. I've listened to it myself. I'm only including that because I'm trying to get all of the facts together, all of the tidbits, all of the theories, everything compiled together. However, that's not my claim. I'm not claiming that that's what is said at the end of the call. That's not what I personally hear. Facts about the case that led to complications. Oh, where do we begin? So, as you know, it was a mess. The crime scene was a mess. The people that came to the house tampered with the crime scene and caused there to be new DNA and fingerprints everywhere. At the beginning, it was treated as a missing persons case and was treated as such for the first few hours. They thought JonBenét had been kidnapped. So the house wasn't elaborately searched when they first got there. They were very, very short-staffed because it was the day after Christmas, so a lot of officers were on vacation. There was no signs of forced entry into the house. A few hours after the body was found, the Ramseys lawyered up with separate lawyers. That is a detail that I've always remembered as so odd. If you were to ask me, what the weirdest piece of evidence is in the JonBenét Ramsey case, it might be that they immediately got separate lawyers, because that tells me that you have different motives, you have different intentions. Why didn't they get the same? That has always been really, really weird to me. They allegedly refused to cooperate with the police. Again, there's mixed stories. There are people who have literally left the police department over this case because they feel like local DA office was not working with them at all. The Ramseys say that anytime they were asked for any information, they were willing to comply. John said that his HR person reached out to him and said, hey, they think that you guys did it. The cops think that you did it. You are their lead suspects. So then they didn't want to cooperate with police because they thought that they were guilty, which they kind of look a little guilty. Officers had requested a separate statement from Patsy and John, but they said they would only be interviewed together. The police declined this offer. So it's like kind of like mixed, because I also feel like an interview with both of them is better than not getting an interview with them at all, because they had to wait months. They waited from December to April to finally be able to get an interview with them. And then I believe it was another 6 months after that they were able to get another interview. So I feel like it would have been worth it to interview them together rather than not at all. No, maybe not. I don't know. I'm not a cop. Ramsey's did a TV interview, even though they wouldn't talk to the police, which frustrated them and made the case even harder. This interview was not perceived well by the public, and they were even more guilty in the public eye after this. So the reason that they did this is, I believe John had connections at CBS. There was like an actual reason that they went along with this. It was something so goofy. It was to protect Boulder. It was Boulder, Colorado, where they lived. I guess that they were... And I don't really understand this, because that's like the reason that John has said, right, is that they were trying to protect Boulder and that their friends wanted them to protect Boulder. But like Patsy getting on there and saying there is a killer on the loose, keep your babies close to you, that doesn't make Boulder feel safe. That doesn't make Boulder look good. So in what way were they protecting Boulder by doing this interview? I just don't understand that. Burke was not allowed to be interviewed by police, and Ramsey's demanded that he be talked to by a children's psychiatrist only. I don't think that's that bizarre. Like, if he doesn't know anything, and he's, like, I don't know, they just lost one of their kids. I understand that they don't want to put their other one through more trauma than he's already dealing with. And he's, like, being scrutinized by the public as a young boy. I get wanting to protect your kid from that. This case began to gain traction in the media immediately after headlines broke, and having a case making national headlines makes a case difficult. Like with the O.J. Simpson case or with any other really big case, it's very difficult to find a jury that is going to be impartial, that is going to go in and they're not going to know anything about this case and not have any skewed opinion or any bias going into it from a tabloid that they read or something that they've seen, especially now. But then even, because this case literally... I believe the only person that JonBenét was like second to was Princess Diana, like fame level wise, when this was going on. So it would be really difficult once this case blew up to find people who were able to be jurors that didn't already know about it. No one around the Ramseys wanted to talk either, their friends, their family, their neighbors, or to the officers or to reporters. In fact, the Ramseys had demanded none of their close friends speak with the officers or press at all. The one friend who did speak with officers a couple times was named Judith Phillips, and she got cut off by the Ramseys and treated poorly by the rest of the people in that group. Judith, what did you know? What did you do, Judith? Red flags for detectives that specifically made the Ramseys look suspicious to them. Usually when a murder takes place in a home, the first suspects are initially anyone who was in a home at the time of the murder. That makes sense. It's kind of like if a husband or wife dies, the first suspect until ruled out is the spouse. Marriage is such a happy place to be. Okay, I'm not married. The fact that the ransom note was written in the house, that doesn't look good. Why would you want to spend longer at the scene of the crime than necessary? That doesn't make sense. I can kind of understand, like, if this were like a super mastermind, right, and they didn't want anything that would point back to them, writing it on Patsy's paper and using her pen, that would be so brilliant of them, so that there would be no way to ever, like, figure out who it was. But then they should have, like, not left her body in the basement. Like, if they were trying to get a ransom, then why would they leave their leverage? Like, okay. Only someone who knew the Ramsey schedule would have known that she would have walked down the back set of stairs in the house, or else it would have been left in a more obvious spot, like hung on the fridge, left on the counter, something like that. They knew that she was going to be walking down that flight of stairs. I think that this is a little bit weird, because it was clearly left for her, but John was the one that it was addressed to. That's a little odd as well. I don't know. It also had to have been somebody that knew they were going to be going to Michigan the next morning, and that they had to, like, have that note up there, because whenever she called, it was very early in the morning when all of this happened. When she found her, she said it was like around 5 in the morning that she went down to brew coffee initially. So that's really early in the morning. They had to have known that they had to be out of the house and have that set up there for her before that time in the morning because of their early flight. John and Patsy getting separate attorneys means that there's some sort of conflict of interest between the two of them. Maybe one of them believed that the other had some sort of involvement. Maybe it was just a suspicion. Maybe it was certainty. They also were not together when they were looking for her. So John, like, kind of took over and was like, okay, I'm gonna, like, look through the house top to bottom to top. He was running around the house, and Patsy was like with her friends and family that had come over to support her. I think it was just friends. Patsy was with her friends who came over to support her, and I believe that the family doctor came over and gave her a Valium. I can understand after they find out she's passed away. If my child is missing, I'm not going to take a drug that's going to make me incoherent. How will I be of any help to find my child? If I knew my child was already passed away, then I might need some meds. I don't know. Right after her body was found, police overhear John on the phone making travel plans to go back to Atlanta, Georgia, where they're from, but detectives tell him that he has to stay in Boulder to help with the investigation. So when I first heard about this case, I judged them so hard. Like, why would you go back to Atlanta? Like, what do you mean? I also didn't know when I first learned about this case, I didn't even know that they were from Atlanta. I thought that they were just going out there because it's where they had family. I didn't realize how recently they had moved to Boulder. Do I think it's weird? Yes and no. We have to understand that these are like rich people, right? So rich people handle their problems how rich people want to, right? So if they can afford to just jump on a plane and go be with their family, then they can afford to do that. John also said that he didn't really feel like as much of a sense of community and like belonging in Boulder as he did in Atlanta. And so it could make sense. I also feel like if I just lost my child, I would have a really difficult time being in that house. And they didn't go back to that house. They went back to Boulder, but they didn't go back to that house. So I can understand why it would be so difficult. I also feel like if I thought that somebody had broken into my home and murdered my child, I would want to find that person, and I wouldn't leave the state that they were in. But they also wanted to take JonBenét's body to bury her where her half-sister was buried in Atlanta. So I can understand that, but also, like, she didn't die in a car accident the way that her sister did. There was foul play involved. So, like, priorities, right? Like, maybe the funeral comes a little bit later, or maybe the burial comes a little bit later. I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard because I don't have any children. So I can't say what I would do. Like, people will judge people who are grieving so bad, and I'm like, okay, but has this happened to you? I don't know. Another thing that made them a red flag to police is that they wouldn't give separate statements. The bowl of pineapple and milk that no one seemed to know where it came from, which was also JonBenét's favorite dessert, but only fingerprints found on it were Patsy's and Burke's. That's weird. That's also why there's been theories revolving around Burke saying, oh, well, maybe JonBenét had walked up and, like, plucked a piece of pineapple out of the bowl. He got mad, swung the flashlight, hit her in the back of the head. That's going way farther deeper into it than I'm ready yet. We're still going through why they were red flags to the police, but that is weird because it's not in anybody's story, the pineapple and milk, but Patsy's and Burke's fingerprints were the only ones on it. The fibers of Patsy's sweater being on the duct tape, that made them a red flag to the police. The refusal to cooperate with officers. Michelle Wood, a homicide detective, says she's worked on similar cases where a body was found inside the home, and generally speaking, innocent family members are willing to talk and cooperate with police. And that is something that I have to agree with as well. Like, even if they got a call from John's HR guy saying, you guys, they think that it's you. If they knew in their hearts it wasn't them, let them think that. Let them rule you out. Take a polygraph test. Be so forthcoming with evidence that they couldn't possibly believe that it's you, so that you can find the killer of your child. I just personally don't know if I would care if the police temporarily thought that I was responsible for it, or if the media thought that I was responsible for it, because my sole focus would be on finding the killer of my child. And also, if there was really a threat to my family like this, right? Somebody broke into my home and murdered my child while the rest of my family and I were sleeping in our beds, I would feel worried about the rest of my family. I would feel worried about Burke. I would feel worried about my partner. Like, and also adult children, because, you know, what if they were what if you got a random phone call and it was like, oh, we've got so-and-so, we've got your other child. I don't know. It is a little odd to me. I would really want to find out who did it. I would really, really want to find out that my family was not a target. John Ramsey was unaccounted for an entire hour and a half while the police were there. That's weird. Where were you? I've also seen, like, a couple of conflicting things, and I don't know if maybe Linda is the actual, like, homicide detective, or if French was, like, a different officer that showed up and he wasn't trained, but I've seen repeatedly that Linda was the first officer who responded that day. But I've also seen that French was, like I said in this video earlier, that French was the first one there. And so that's a little bit conflicting. But Linda is the one that goes on to do an interview. She actually won't talk to anybody about this case anymore. But Linda was the one that was like calling for backup. And she also was the one that was heavily criticized by the media for the handling of this case. Linda was at the house the day of the murder. And she says that she was so convinced that she was with the murderer in the house because they were behaving so weirdly that she counted how many bullets were in her holster just in case she needed to use them. She also describes this moment where her and John are both standing over JonBenét's body and standing up and looking at each other, locking eyes, and that she just knew in that moment that he was the murderer and that he knew that she knew. And like, that's not a conviction, that's not a guilty charge, but that is her personal testimony to this. The blanket being over her, detectives stated that bodies of victims that were taken care of after the homicide has taken place implies a personal connection to the victim and the killer. Like a mother-daughter, a father-daughter, or like, I don't know. Investigators believe that the weapon that caused the blunt force trauma to her head was a heavy-duty flashlight found in the kitchen of the Ramsey household, but they all claimed it wasn't their flashlight. But it's a perfect fit for the 8.5-inch dent in her head. There were no footprints found outside of the house, but some reports say that this is in fact a rumor and there was no snow on the ground for there to be footprints in the first place. I don't know about you. I kind of struggled to believe that in the 90s, before all of the global warming drama ruining our winters, that I have a really difficult time believing that there wasn't snow in Boulder, Colorado. Have you been to Boulder, Colorado? Because I have. The snow there is not a joke. And over Christmas time, like, I just have a hard time imagining. But I don't know. I wasn't there in 96. When the Ramseys did their TV interview, it was around a week after their daughter had died. They were largely under attack by the media for this because people expected to hear from them the following day if they were truly innocent. So, I don't know. I don't know that my priority would be the media if my daughter had just passed away. The next day, let me grieve. And if somebody had broken into my house and murdered my child, that is very traumatic. I would need more than one day to recover from that. Trying to protect my other child, I feel like a week is pretty soon after she passed away. The date it says she passed on her tombstone was 12/25/96, and the media crucified the Ramseys for this, asking how they could have possibly known what day she actually died. Well, the autopsy said that it was probably 10 to 12 hours before she was found. So that's how they know that. The idea that Bert could have slept through everything and that John and Patsy weren't keeping him close. So that was something that I found weird. When I said earlier, I would have a really hard time sleeping through that if I heard my mom scream. I also would want to have my child close to me if one of my other children had just been abducted. They would not just be sleeping in their bed. They would be with me. Somebody's coming after my kids for money. I don't want them to get any more of my kids. Patsy had been lightening her daughter's hair since she was really little. JonBenét was not actually blonde. She had been doing that for a year at this point. The fact that they were sexualizing their daughter for these pageants, that was something that police really didn't love about them, or the media. Also, the rough drafts of the ransom note in the trash. Certainly if you were going to go pull off a crime of this magnitude, I would assume that you would already have the letter written, like we were saying before. But even if you didn't already have the letter written, you at least would know what you were going to say. You would know if you were going to just address Mr. Ramsey or if you were going to address both of them. And then, like, why starting out with the formality in the beginning of saying Mr. Ramsey, but then at the end, they just call him John? 4 months into the case, the Ramseys finally agreed to be interviewed in April of 97. They were interrogated for roughly 22 hours. John gives up names of people that he considers suspects and gives officers potential leads. He said he had considered every single person that he knew a suspect and pointed fingers at Priscilla White, whose house they had been at that night. He was said to be suspicious of her because apparently after JonBenét passed away, friends of his came forward to tell him that Priscilla was apparently jealous of Patsy, but officers were quickly able to disprove that her or her husband Fleet White had any involvement whatsoever. And with that, I will say the records do say that the Whites, both husband and wife, were cooperative with police the entire time. If they were cooperating with police, I don't think that she was likely the killer of JonBenét. Plus, also, like, what a diabolical thing to accuse your friend of. My goodness, she's jealous of your wife, so she brutally murdered your daughter on Christmas night after you guys all had Christmas dinner together. That's the same family. The Whites are the ones they had Christmas family dinner with 2 years in a row. And, side note, Fleet apparently had like several like freakouts during this time, and one of them was allegedly because he was so upset that the Ramseys got lawyers. He didn't think that they should have done that. And he also apparently got really upset one time and was like in a fit of rage, like freaking out in their house. And Patsy, unlike whoever else was there, just like went downstairs and hid, and John went up to handle it. And Patsy was like, well, I just wasn't in a state to ask questions about it at the time. Which, I mean, maybe it was the Valium. I don't know. Or I would want to know what happened, but also like maybe at that point like the worst has already happened. It says here that Patsy had accidentally told investigators that she was in the same clothes that she had worn the night before. I don't know if that was necessarily an accident. That wasn't going to be something that she would have been able to keep a secret. There's pictures of them the night before. So they say that she like tries to cover for herself. Investigators that she was in the same clothes that she had worn the night before, and says that she just put them back on. I don't know if that was like an accidental reveal. Like I said earlier, I feel like she could have just been wearing the same outfit for the holidays, and then she was getting on a flight and she had to be up early. I don't know if that was an accident. I feel like if she wanted to change, she would have changed. During interrogation, Patsy behaves in a way that wasn't only defensive but offensive as well, by yelling and screaming at officers. In 1999, a grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy, but Judge Alex Hunter said no because he didn't believe there was enough evidence. This information wasn't made public until 2013. The charges were for child abuse leading to death, and I actually have those exact charges right here. Out December 25th and December 26th, 1996, in Boulder County, Colorado, JonBenét Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, and feloniously render assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such person for the commission of a crime, knowing the person being assisted had committed and was suspected of the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse resulting in death. Next one, also for JonBenét. On or between December 25th and December 26th, 1996, in Boulder County, Colorado, JonBenét Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of JonBenét Ramsey, a child under the age of 16. But we're not going to forget about Patsy. No. On or between December 25th and December 26th, 1996, in Boulder County, Colorado, Patricia Paw? Is that how you say her middle name? On or between December 25th and December 26th, 1996, in Boulder County, Colorado, Patricia Paw Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of life to the child's life or health. Which posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of JonBenét Ramsey, a child under the age of 16. And this final one. On or about December 25th and December 26th, in Boulder County, Colorado, Patricia Paw Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, and feloniously render assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such person for commission of a crime, knowing the person being assisted has committed and was suspected of the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse resulting in death. And with that, while a jury did want to indict them, I do have to also say, in 2008, all the family members were cleared as suspects because there were 3 different men's DNA found in JonBenét Ramsey's clothing. However, experts say there are other ways that it could have ended up there, like the manufacturer. The DNA that was found in her underwear matched the DNA found under her nails. A weird note about her underwear as well, that, I don't know, this is just bizarre. She's wearing size 12 underwear and she was a 6-year-old girl, so they were like really ridiculously large on her. Why are we doing that? The foreign DNA that was found on her underwear and under her fingernails was also found on the weapon used to strangle her. With that, I do want to say, with the DNA that's found, there is a file with this DNA. Over 200 people have been searched, 200 potential suspects have been attempted to be matched to this DNA, and obviously it has not been matched to anybody yet. This is an especially upsetting detail that I learned a little bit later in the case. She has 2 marks that are consistent with a stun gun. And then I'm gonna say this part because I feel like we're all thinking it. You know, these details about the family that are so blatantly obvious and so frustrating, and this case was just so mishandled. there's a reason that the public didn't like the Ramseys, right? They didn't do anything that we think we would do if we were put in the same situation. But they also had all of these details stacked against them. And something that I just cannot understand, let's say that the ransom note was really written by somebody outside of the house. They broke every single rule on it, right? It said, don't call police. They straight away called the police. If you talk to a stray dog, they had all of their friends come over. Were they not worried about their daughter being beheaded? And they didn't ever receive that phone call. And then I also find it really interesting that John now tries super hard to push the narrative that he was not wealthy. Why are we trying to push that narrative? We've all seen the mansion. We've seen the blueprints of your house. So, like I said, as of 2008, none of the family is still considered suspects. I did already talk about the theory with Burke potentially hitting his sister in the back of the head because of that piece of pineapple. Just a theory. I personally don't think that Burke did it. That's just my opinion. And also the law's opinion, actually, because he was not found guilty. So until he's found guilty, he is not guilty. There's a few other little things that are very weird to me that I feel like are worth mentioning. So Burke and JonBenét both had a habit of putting fecal matter in places. Like wherever, they would just smear fecal matter. One of these examples is, I guess, JonBenét had gotten like candy the day before for Christmas, and there was already fecal matter on the candy, and that is a symptom of a child who is being abused. And JonBenét also had a problem with bedwetting, and so did Burke. That's also symptoms of children who are being abused. So let's talk about suspects and ex-suspects. So any of these people could currently be suspects for the FBI, or will be again. The Boulder Police Department is still an active investigation, so they won't speak on it. There. So outside of the family, who are the suspects? John Carr. He was a man who confessed to the police that he had done it. Seems easy enough. He had been fired from his job as an English... Was he my English teacher? Because I can't speak. He had been fired from his job as an English teacher. He was only there for 2 weeks before he was fired for being too strict. He was wanted for child pornography charades. He had also been married to 2 teenage girls. If you didn't know anything else about the Ramseys, this man would look like it. Would look like he's the one that did it. He had also been married to 2 teenage girls. One of them was 13. However, his ex-wife came forward saying she knew he hadn't done it because she had photos of them together on Christmas in 1996, so he completely lied to get attention. Crazy how he was outsmarted by a literal child, no? So, a mystery man / mystery men, the DNA that was found on her clothes, fingernails, the strangulation device, it hasn't been matched to anybody. So whose DNA is that? It could have been a man who had seen her at a pageant. His name is Michael. I was not able to find his last name. He allegedly confessed to his coworker that he had killed her and then committed suicide 2 months after JonBenét passed away. Gary Oliva is what it looks like his last name is. He lived only a few blocks away from JonBenét when she passed away, arrested in 2000 for unrelated drug charges, and a picture of JonBenét was found in his backpack. But also, like I was saying earlier, people were obsessed with this girl. That doesn't necessarily link them to it. Tabloids had pictures of her. Several people have pictures of her in their house. Not their backpack, though. That is a little weird, but that makes him obsessed with her. That doesn't make him her murderer. The two are not mutually exclusive. So, he said that it was because she was an exceptional girl and her death was an exceptional loss, and that he wanted to make a shrine for her. His friend Michael Vale says that the day after the murder, Gary called him saying, "I hurt a little girl. I hurt a little girl." Gary also told him that he had hurt this girl in Boulder, Colorado, and there are no other crimes that were reported that day in Boulder regarding little girls. The strangulation method used on JonBenét was the exact same method used by Gary when he tried to strangle his mom with a telephone cord. Then in 2016, he was arrested for child pornography. His DNA did not match the mystery man's DNA, which was found at the crime scene. So either way, he's a real piece of crap. He's a real bad dude. Even if he didn't do it to JonBenét, he did it to somebody. So, and he tried to choke out his own mom with a telephone cord. That's That's not a mama's boy. Again, like I was saying with the first guy on this list, I feel like you would hear about this and you would be like, oh my gosh, that's probably him, right? Like, it's the same strangulation method. And he also said he hurt a little girl in Boulder. But I don't think that having the picture of her is enough evidence, because he is a creep. He is a PDF. And so him having, like, he got arrested in 2016 for child pornography. So it makes sense that he would have a picture of JonBenét because she was a pageant queen and creepy men were obsessed with her. So I mean, if it looks like a duck, it's probably a duck. I think he was just a creepy man. I don't think that necessarily makes him also her murderer. And like I said, his DNA did not match the mystery man DNA that was found at the crime scene. That would have been pretty easy to prove. Fake Santa / Bill McReynolds. So you remember that Christmas party that they had on December 23rd? Bet you didn't think I was going to come back to that. So they hired a Santa for that party. And apparently that Santa was obsessed with JonBenét. And she kept... I don't know exactly who said this to her, but friends were like saying that she was going to get to see Santa again after Christmas. Like, he had another present for her after Christmas. Is that just really weird? Or is that, but also, like, what would be the explanation for that? Like, really, what would be the explanation for that apart from Santa killing her the day after Christmas? Because that's what happened the day after Christmas. Santa goes home after Christmas. So, the family friend who dressed up like Santa, his own daughter had been kidnapped 22 years before in 1974. Sad. He visited the Ramsey home 2 days prior as Santa and had made remarks to JonBenét about how special she was. He went into surgery prior to JonBenét's passing and brought with him a little jar of glitter she had given him. All of this seems really sweet until you find out he told his wife that should he die, he wanted his ashes to be mixed with that same glitter. Charming. His wife had also written a play about a young child being molested and left dead in their basement. However, cops were able to determine that Bill McReynolds could not have committed this murder. There's also a lot of talk about, I don't think I've brought this up, in the basement there is a window that is broken. There's been a lot of speculation about this window because there's apparently, like, webs on it. And so people are like, oh, well, if somebody had gotten through it, then the webs would be gone. But if it has been sitting there untouched, then that's why the webs have been able to build up. And the webs didn't look fresh. So, like, it must have been sitting there, like, nobody could have gone through, right? Unless people went through and the webs were just undisturbed. So, on Dr. Phil, he did an interview with Burke, and it was not received well by the public at all. They thought that he was weird. I thought that he just looked uncomfortable. I remember watching it and being like, oh, he looks like a boy that's been bullied by the media his whole entire life. Like, how could he be comfortable getting on? He knows no matter what he says, people are going to have an opinion. And whether his parents did it or not, his sister passed away. So he was just a little kid when that happened. During the interview with Dr. Phil, he showed a video demonstrating that it would be possible for somebody to sneak in through the window in the basement, making any of those scenarios above possible that somebody could have snuck in through that window. And there was a suitcase that was displaced, like, beneath the window that they could have potentially used to jump back out. I just don't think that it makes sense, though, to try to take somebody for ransom and not take them. Even if JonBenét had put up, like, a horrible struggle and she didn't survive in the process, if the whole point of it was to get money, how come nobody ever tried to get a payout? And why would they take the child that they were trying to get the money for? Even if they knew that they were never going to give that child back, why wouldn't they just take the child? Because otherwise it's just needless murder for no reason. I mean, the death of a child is always for no reason. So where are they now? Burke, like I said, he did his interview on Dr. Phil. I can't believe that was 10 years ago now. That was in 2016. That's crazy. And that was the first time he spoke in 20 years, and you guys tore him apart. He filed $71 million in lawsuits after the CBS docuseries, The Case of JonBenét Ramsey, because they heavily painted 9-year-old Burke as the killer. And that whole, like, pineapple theory, that's basically what they used. They painted him as, like, a really angry kid with lots of outbursts. And he won. He sued and he won, so good for him. His official accusation, defendant's accusation, is that Burke Ramsey killed his sister was based on a compilation of lies, half-truths, manufactured information, and the intentional commission of avoidance of truthful information about the murder of JonBenét Ramsey. He is now a software engineer and works from home and tries to avoid public interaction as much as possible. That makes me really sad for him. Patsy passed away from ovarian cancer in 2006, 2 years before her and the rest of the family were officially exonerated. And John remarried, would that be wife number 3 then, in 2011 to Jan Rosu, a fashion designer living in Michigan, and that is where he lives now. And that's where we are finished with the case, pretty much. That's it. Insanely frustrating, no? You understand why I tried to get my degree, just to solve this case. That's a lot. And yeah, I still have so many questions and 0 answers. Thank you for watching my video. You guys should definitely consider subscribing. This was my first video, could you tell? Probably, because I definitely need to, like, get some better cameras. I also, was, like, reading off of my computer the whole time because there was so much information. I feel like if I were to do a more digestible, like, smaller video, I would just memorize everything, but there was a lot of this is memorized. I just wanted to be able to reference this because I had so many talking points that I wanted to hit. Also, I did want to say that I watched a podcast this morning, and it was from True Crime Junkie. It was amazing. They did an even deeper deep dive than what I just did, and I honestly brushed up on my notes while I was listening to the podcast, and I was like, oh, I hadn't heard that before. That's interesting. So yeah, hopefully one day this little girl's murder is solved. Until then, rest easy, JonBenét.